how to learn PCB designing in most effective and easiest way in the SDM industry. Let's explore that in this video. First, I will be talking about what is PCB design. Secondly, I'm talking about what are the prerequisite or pre-required fundamental skills for you to start yourself as a PCB design engineer in career at a PCB industry or ESDM industry. Third one, I'm talking about the stages of PCB designing as a learner, how you can proceed with this industry. Last but not the least, on the fourth side, we'll be talking about what are the 4 different sources from where you can learn PCB designing for absolutely free of cost. So let's get started. Hi everyone, I am Vaibhav Sugandhi, passionate PCB designer and an electronic engineer working in the ESDM industry from last 7 years. This video is completely based on my 7 years of experience as a PCB design engineer. I hope it helps you build your career in PCB industry. First of all, what is PCB or PCB designing? PCB is nothing but printed circuit board, which is electrical and mechanical structure for the electronic circuits to create and use in electronic components. For example, any digital equipment or digital technology component which we are using nowadays around us is having a PCB for sure. Not only one PCB, but more than one PCB as per the requirement. Consider the example of this camera or mobile phone or a microphone or any kind of electronic or electrical or even electromechanical equipments are having a PCB. They look like a green color card inside, which are so called motherboard or maybe a circuit board or just a PCB in most of the cases. Designing these PCBs is nothing but PCB design engineering. It requires a lot of skills and a lot of patience and experience to design a working effectively and efficiently a correct model of PCB to use in an industrial product design engineering. Having said that, now let's talk about what are the fundamental requirements or prerequisites to start your career as a PCB designer. Now, first thing is having the understanding of basics of electronics is very essential. Without knowing the concept of resistor, capacitor, inductor, voltage, current, and so many electronic components and electrical properties, you cannot start your career as a PCB design engineer. For example, you must understand how Ohm's law works, how maximum power transfer theorem works, KVL, KCL, all these fundamentals should be known to you to start your career as a PCB designer. So make sure that you understand the basics of electronics fundamentally as strong as required to start your career as a PCB designer. I'm not saying you need to have a PhD in this, but at least you must have enough knowledge to understand the fundamentals so that you can learn about any component as per the application or as per the requirement in future by referring to any books or maybe online content. Second prerequisite is you must be able to draw the circuit by yourself on the paper by understanding the requirement. For example, if I give you an assignment of creating the LED chaser circuit by using an NE555 timer IC, you must be capable of writing or drawing that particular circuit diagram on the paper and able to compute the values of a capacitor and resistors being used in that as per the requirement of circuit designing. That particular skill is very essential to start your career as a PCB design engineer. If you are not having that one, it is very difficult for you to understand the concept of PCB designing. However, it is learnable and it is very essential to learn before starting your career as a PCB designer. Last but not the least, you must be knowing how to use computer. Okay, I'm not joking. I know most of you are very capable of using a computer, but what I mean is when you are using a computer for the designing of PCB, it's like an artistic work. You must be capable of using the keyboard in a very efficient way, using an external mouse as an efficient way, and understanding how the entire computer architecture works to use the entire software properly is very essential to start your career as a PCB designer. I believe that nowadays everybody is having a good understanding of using the computer and all. That's why I'm not stressing more on this point. Now you know that these are the prerequisites to start your career as a PCB industry or a PCB designer. Now, what are the stages of starting your career as a PCB design engineer? First stage is all about learning single layer PCB designing. Why? Because you will go through the fundamentals and understand what are EDA tool and how to use that and get accomplished to the entire process. That's why you must start with the very basic. In fact, all my students starts their PCB designing from the single layer. In fact, I recommended them to use single layer designing for most of the application they have designed for the practice purpose. There you will get to know that what are the challenges you get to solve the problem of designing the entire circuit in single copper layer. That makes you to understand the challenges and helps you to realize the value of the features in the second stage. That's why start your entire design engineering with a single layer PCB designing with a through-hole components only. Now you are done with the single layer PCB designing with the through-hole components. Second stage is all about designing a two-layer PCBs using SMD as well as through-hole components. There you will realize the value of vias and two copper layer to make your entire PCBs. That's where you design a little complex circuits with the SMD components and also a little bit of user perspective, industrial design perspective, and mechanical enclosure perspective. That's where the two-layer PCB designing is very essential to learn. Thereafter, multi-layer PCB designing is the third step or the third stage where you will get to know that how to use a layer stacker and how to use the signal integrity, power integrity to solve a certain problem. Again, it's not the final stage. You will be learning a lot of things as per your industry requirement and as per the client requirement and as you grow in the industry. So that's why first and second stages are very essential to start your career as a PCB designer. Wherein the third stage is as per your company requirement or the place where you start working. So learning multi-layer PCB designing is a bit challenging. You must have a one-to-one mentor or any certain paid course to start your four-layer PCB designing career. So that's why make sure that you learn it when you join industry or about to join a specific industry which requires multi-layer PCB designing. These are the certainly a simple way of dividing the stages of PCB designing. Last but not the least, let's talk about the 4 sources from where you can learn PCB designing absolutely free of cost. First of all, these recommendations are not sponsored, but it is very happy and proud for me to share it with you because I learned from these creators very well from the beginning of my industry experience. First one is a German engineer detailed way of explaining the circuit on the YouTube channel called Great Scott. This is absolutely a very interesting and very creative way of explaining how circuit works, how these electronic components behave, and a detailed explanation with a very patient way of drawing the circuit and explaining in a very simple way. I highly recommend you to refer this YouTube channel to learn a lot of things with respect to electrical and electronic engineering. Second YouTube channel is Esteem PCB Academy. Indian origin engineer who worked in industry as a hardware design engineer and learned a lot of skills from the experience of industrial product design engineering and then started teaching that to the Indian origin people or for the entire world. So if you want to learn about multi-layer PCB designing and especially with respect to high-speed design, you can refer the YouTube channel called Esteem PCB Academy. Third recommendation is a DigiKey sponsored YouTube tutorials from Sean Hamill. He is a foreign author or a foreign tutorial creator who created a detailed video of how to design PCB or how to learn PCB designing using the KiCad as an EDA tool. He explains the concept in a little bit higher way, but very amazing and very interesting way to learn these things with respect to industrial approach. DigiKey sponsored one and very easy to learn and absolutely free of cost. Last but not the least, in our own channel, Linked Frequency, we have 2 free tutorials for you to start with. First one is Basics of Electronics, which is absolutely free of cost and available for you to understand how these basic component works. For example, resistor, capacitor, inductor, and voltage, current, also the diode and the transistor, all these components, how they behave and how to use them in a detailed way I have explained in that tutorial. Second part of that is PCB designing for absolute beginners. In that playlist, I have explained you how to design a single layer PCB using the EasyEDA tool. There I have focused more on the fundamentals, more on the concepts and more on the tutorial perspective of learning the fundamentals of PCB designing. So that in future, if you want to change the tool from EasyEDA to any other tool, fundamentals will remain same. Surely check these 2 tutorials on our channel, Linked Frequency. I hope you enjoyed and learned something special from this particular video, how to start your career as a PCB design engineer in 2025. If you got some value addition from this particular video, show us a support by giving a thumbs up to this particular video and share it with your friends and family members who are interested to start their career in ESDM industry. See you again in the next video. Until then, tune yourself to make a difference.